So I guess now is a good time to talk about the adult actors in this movie. Unlike with the child actors, I already knew who most of them were, since a lot of them are from sitcoms. Odd casting choice for a horror movie, maybe, but I thought they did a good job with it. I guess first I'll mention the unfortunately late John Ritter as Ben, since he's probably the most recognizable. He's probably best remembered for being in Three's Company, which I've never been too crazy about, but I always liked him in it. He always had great comedic timing. He's also proven his acting chops before. A lot of people probably also remember that he was in an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer where he played an abuser who turned out to be a robot. Before the reveal, he was really creepy.
Do you want me to slap that smartass mouth of yours? Who's up for dessert? I made chocolate chip cookies!
Richie is played by Harry Anderson, best known as Judge Harry Stone from Night Court.
Mr. Fielding, you have the temerity to come into my courtroom dressed like that, and you don't even have one of these?
And before that, he played basically the same character on Cheers a few times. Harry Anderson is the kind of actor who pretty much always plays himself, but I kinda love him, so I don't mind. I always found him pretty funny and lovable. I actually don't know if they changed Richie from DJ to stand-up comic before or after they cast Harry Anderson, but I could see it being after. Mike is played by Tim Reed, best known as Venus Flytrap from WKRP in Cincinnati way back in the late 70s. I'm sure he's done other things, but I mostly know him as Venus. Looking at how he dressed like a pimp, you'd think he'd be a big departure from Mike Hanlon. But Venus was also a school teacher.
I can teach you about the atom in 2 minutes. Will you go back to school and finish out the year?
And there's a famous scene where he taught the anatomy of an atom to a gang member.
I was finished anyway. Now you go on back.
Stan is played by Richard Macer, who is just one of those character actors who has been in everything. I'm sure you've seen him somewhere. Bill was played by Richard Thomas, who is mostly known for being on The Waltons, which I'd never watched, so I hadn't seen him before this. I like him a lot, though. Eddy was played by Dennis Christopher, who is another one I'd never heard of before this movie. I love him, though. He's adorable. I have seen him in a couple of things since. He also ended up in the Buffyverse, but in demon makeup, so I didn't recognize him. Beverly was played by Annette O'Toole, who is another one I hadn't seen before. Though, sometime after this movie, she and John Ritter were in a TV movie called The Dreamer of Oz, which was about the life of L. Frank Baum and how he ended up writing The Wizard of Oz. John Ritter played the title character and Annette O'Toole played his wife. I guess they just really liked working together in it, and they had great chemistry. And now back to the movie. On his way back into town, Bill visits Georgies Grave. Aw, poor kid was only 6.
How could I have forgotten? I'm so sorry.
But naturally, his moment gets interrupted.
Take your pick, Billy boy.
Well, this is clearly a threat.
Except for the one on the end. That's already taken.
Bill doesn't seem to get the significance of one of the graves being filled, though.
I'm not afraid of you.
Challenge accepted. Anyway, Bill goes to the library and sees his own books on display. The smile is clearly Pennywise inspired, and I love that another is called The Glowing. Also, this might be a stretch, but I wonder if Gargoyles Dance is a reference to Dance Macabre. Anyway, he reunites with Mike.
I know how old I look.
I remember you as a kid.
Welcome home, Bill.
Aww. They take a walk so they can talk in private.
I feel so thick, Mike.
Bill still doesn't remember much about what happened or why he came back.
How come you remember?
I never left. How could I forget?
But as they talk, it starts coming back.
Lucky 7. One of us lived around here.
Right.
Yeah. She was poor. Her father was the janitor. This was poor town.
Yeah, still is.
Awkward.
Hey, I'm a bachelor, Bill.
It turns out that they all have some kind of psychic link.
I could tell whenever one of us hit town. I don't think we're all here yet.
No.
Mike decides to help jog Bill's memory by revealing that he kept Bill's old bike. Bill was a Lone Ranger fan and named the bike Silver.
Hi-yo, Silver! Away!
I ran across in the pawn shop about a year ago. It's got a flat tire, but that's all that's wrong with it.
This bike has significance because whenever Bill rode it when he was a kid, he believed he could go fast enough to outrun any kind of danger. And just like Eddy with his battery acid inhaler, he believed in it enough that it worked. Anyway, fate also plays a big part in this. Not only did Mike buy Bill's bike after seeing it in a second-hand shop, he also bought a repair kit for the flat tire, on impulse before even finding the bike.
There was some kind of force guiding us that summer. I don't know if it came just to help us or if we created it, but maybe it's still here.
Meanwhile, Richie Tozier gets into town. Of course, Mike isn't there at the moment, so Richie tries to wait in the library. Gotta love his choice of reading material. You look really casual there, Richie.
A little young for you, isn't she, Richie? Beep, beep, Richie!
I didn't hear that.
Come on, Richie, you know damn well no one else can see what you're seeing.
Don't you want a balloon? What's the matter? One balloon, not enough. Try on!
I guess he's just too freaked out to pretend that he doesn't see it either. That actress flinched a tiny bit. I'm actually kind of impressed by how the rest of them manage not to, and with this one doing it so little it's barely noticeable. How do you not get extremely nervous when you know a balloon is about to pop in your face? Pennywise is having a little too much fun now.
Last chance, Tasha. Get out! You're too old to stop me. You're all too old.
Meanwhile, this poor woman has no idea why she's being yelled at.
Do you have Prince Albert in a can? You do? Well, you better let the poor guy out!
Pennywise just takes Be a Clown to the HNL.
Cold, never.
Excuse me, ma'am. Is your refrigerator running? It is. Well, you better catch it before it runs away!
Richie's like, dad jokes! Oh, and this scene feels very different in the book. Richie was still in the library and It was still in the balcony, but it took the form of a Dracula-like creature with razor blades for teeth, and when he slammed his mouth shut, blood and chunks of flesh from its lips slid down his shirt. So while the movie is going for over-the-top dark comedy, the book is going for over-the-top gore. Honestly, this scene is so much fun, I don't mind. Meanwhile, Bill has fixed his bike and... This scene is so cute. I love how they cut back and forth between present time and when they were kids, implying that their friendship transcended time. It's also nice to see Kid Mike get a little more screen time. This also kind of echoes the dam building montage, since it was set to similar music. Oh, but they aren't done being goofy yet. Ah, the joys of clipping cards to your bike, so the spokes pass through them as you ride, making your bike sound like a motorcycle. Kids today don't know what they're missing. And just like that, the fun is over. For them, anyway. Meanwhile, Ben is on his way. Look at that brick phone. In 1990, having one of those meant you were rich.
Pull over here, will you?
Anyway, he has the cab pull over at the Barrens, where he sees a familiar scene play out.
You're it, Porky! You're it! Have a nice trip.
Ben helps the kid out because he's a good guy like that.
I think I'll be okay now.
Hang tough, champ. You're gonna make it.
Aww.
Ben! Ben Hanscom!
Once again, though, he sees his dead father beckoning to him from the water.
We can't wait to get you down here with us.
Any spare change, mister?
Nice jump scare.
I wasn't gonna hurt you. I don't even know you.
Why is that line so funny?
Saying hi to some old ghost, you know.
Welcome home, Ben. Eddy gets into town as well, and naturally he goes straight for the pharmacy. Flashback to a time when Eddy went to pick up his medicine and the pharmacist has a talk with him.
Do you know what a placebo is, Eddy? It's water, Eddy. Water with a squirt of camphor to make it taste like medicine.
Sounds like Eddy's mom has a bit of Munchausen syndrome by proxy, which isn't too surprising. It's pretty bad when even the pharmacist tells you to stop buying medicine.
It's all a lie, a great big lie. I do have asthma, I do.
Sir?
It turns out that the pharmacy is now being run by the grandson of that guy, and he's still there in the back. He's pretty senile, but Eddy still wants to thank him for trying to tell him the truth when he was a kid.
It's all in your head, sonny. You do remember me. Oh, Mr. Key.
And that goes about as well as you would expect.
Get out of Derry while you still can. Beware, girly boy.
Yikes. And now it's Bev's turn to show up. She ends up visiting her dad's old house, and it looks like he still lives there. I'd be afraid to touch one of those ancient doorbell buttons. They look like they could shock you. An old lady answers the door and Bev thinks she pushed the wrong button. But it turns out that the lady knows her dad.
I hate to be the one to have to tell you this, a stranger, but your father's been dead this last 5 years.
But on the bell, it... Kirsch. I thought it said Marsh.
Yeah, how odd. But anyway, she's super nice and invites Bev in for tea. Bev is feeling overwhelmed, so she goes to use the bathroom sink. I love how quick she is to plug the drain.
Did you fall asleep in there? It's tea time.
Surprisingly, nothing too strange happens here, or at least nothing that couldn't be chalked up to stress.
So cozy. How kind you are, miss. I call all the pretty young girls miss. Don't take offense.
It's great the way the scene plays out. Things get weird, but in kind of a gradual way. Did her teeth look like that before? Probably not. And there's the blood, so now we definitely know what's going on.
It did say Marsh on the doorbell.
They float.
Well, that has a bit of a Norman Bates feel to it.
I worry a lot.
Except that his eyes are missing. Yikes.
You're not real. You're not real.
Oh, hi, Pennywise. Wouldn't it be awful if she came all that way just to get hit and killed by a truck? And it turns out that the house was long abandoned and she couldn't have gone inside. Nice mindfuck. Even the unnatural way that balloon moves is a little off-putting.
Excuse me, I'm looking for the Hamlin party.
A little later, Eddy thinks he's the first to show up at the restaurant since he almost doesn't recognize Haystack.
What happened to the rest of you?
Gone but not forgotten. Hey, buddy.
My favorite thing about doing this show is that while looking at the footage over and over, sometimes I'll end up picking up on little details about the movie that I might not have noticed otherwise. In this case, it's that Eddy is kind of awkward when it comes to hugging. It's like he doesn't know what to do with his hands. He's such a cute little whoopee. And then Bill and Mike show up.
Where's Richie Tozier when you need a good line?
Yeah.
And it's just hugs and adorableness all around. And see what I mean about Eddy? Someone should teach this poor man how to hug.
Hey, listen, who wants a drink? Set him up, right? I'll have one.
What is this?
Richie, however, chickens out at first. I can't remember if it was in the book or an early script, but according to the commentary, at some point, Richie went in there to snort coke.
Flashback deal was too much fun in 67, just get a hold.
But again, that didn't happen here.
All right, who got bald and who got wrinkled and how many got chillin' got wings? Beep, beep, Richie.
Either way, he's better now. And of course, everything just kind of stops when Bev walks in.
What a bunch of handsome old men.
And she's obviously kind of overwhelmed as well.
Hi, good looking.
And once she wakes up, it's all hugs and adorableness again.
I'd rather catch you than anybody else in the whole world, Beverly Marsh.
That's too cute.
Oh, I'm so proud of you.
I'm just gonna cry now. I can't even. But once again, she really wanted to see Bill. Okay, you guys, reel it in a little. Anyway, they start talking about their experiences since they got back into town and seeing Pennywise again.
He's working on us already.
Trying to chip away.
Maybe that means he's afraid.
It's afraid.
Oh, man. It.
Title drop. But Eddy is having trouble remembering.
As soon as I crossed the county line, it was like this veil dropped over my eyes.
Then when he does remember, it triggers an asthma attack. And then a full-on breakdown.
I think I remember who Pennywise was now. Red nose, about 75 feet tall, mouth full of razor-sharp teeth.
I don't remember the details, but Eddy did once experience a giant Pennywise in the book.
What the hell is happening?
Oh, poor Eddy.
I'd forgotten it. I stared that creep right in the face.
And you saved Stan's life. You remember that part?
Yeah.
And now they realize that Stan hasn't shown up.
You wouldn't fink out on us, would you, Mike? You talked to him, right?
Yeah, I think he'll be along.
I think we ought to go ahead without him.
All right.
The losers go out.
So they go ahead and have dinner, at first not talking about the bad stuff. And it kicks off another one of these fun montages.
'Cause it's all right. Whoa, it's all right.
Again, like the dam building scene. Same music this time, too. Apparently this scene was mostly unscripted aside from basically a list of subjects that needed to be talked about, and they just let the actors mostly ad-lib.
How many times have you been to the altar, Richie?
Oh, 4 or 5. Women all want the same thing, no offense, Bev.
None taken, creep.
I can definitely believe that this was Harry Anderson's idea. Anyway, it works out beautifully because it comes across as really natural, plus they all just have great chemistry.
Oh, Richie, whatever happened to those glasses?
Contact lenses.
I actually love the scenes where they reminisce and goof around and stuff. I really believe that they all love each other to death, and it makes me all warm and fuzzy.
Oh, well, I live with a... No, I'm not married.
Notice that Bev kind of tiptoes around talking about her relationship, and Eddy just outright lies about his.
Yeah, I'm seeing this really wonderful woman, but with the business and all, I really don't have too much time.
You take it from me, Spaghetti Man, better dead than wed.
Anyway, the conversation sours when Henry Bowers comes up.
Somebody please tell me he was hit by a freight train and put out of his misery.
He ended up in a mental institution after confessing to all the murders.
But it was the killer. And we stopped it.
We thought we did.
Meanwhile, we find out that Henry Bowers is now an agent of IT, and it wants him to kill the rest of them. Back at the restaurant, Richie enjoyed catching up with everyone, but he's planning on not sticking around.
Count me out. I'm going to the hotel. I'm going to get some sleep. And in the morning, I get on a plane, and I'm out of here forever, Richie.
Richie kind of sounds like an asshole, but he does make a good point, that maybe they're being too quick to jump into danger.
Maybe he's right. I mean, if you were talking about going back into the sewer...
We don't know what we're talking about yet, mainly because we haven't talked about it yet.
And then they start bickering until Mike takes charge.
Now, we all came here based on the strength of a promise. As far as I'm concerned, everybody at this table made good on that promise.
All right, then. A toast to Mr. Michael Hanlon, the man without whom none of this would have been necessary.
After they make peace, it's fortune cookie time. It's kind of neat how each abomination suits the person whose cookie it is. Bev sprays her with blood. Every time Bev has gotten a scare, it's involved blood. Eddy's hatches a cockroach because his mom was a germaphobe. Richie's has a pretty gross, realistic eye in it because apparently he was sensitive about wearing glasses. Okay, I'm not sure what Ben's is supposed to be. I guess it couldn't think of a way to mock his weight with a fortune cookie, so it just went with random weirdness. Mike's is a screaming bird fetus, which I think is referencing the book. As a kid, Mike saw it as a giant bird due to a movie he'd seen that scared him. Bill sprouts a furry spider leg for no apparent reason before he covers it up.
Dummy up, everybody.
They all manage to pretend like they got startled by Eddy having an asthma attack. A little later in the library, there's blood everywhere, and it triggers a memory in Bev about how she took the time to clean up the blood in the sink so she wouldn't have to look at it anymore.
Why are we the only ones that can see this?
Meanwhile, Mike is trying to get a hold of Stan again.
You tell that loser that if he hasn't left already, he's a dead man.
Ooh, beep beep, Richie.
Boy, that matches your real hair. Has anyone ever told you? It's great to be back in Derry, breathing in that old Derry air.
He and Eddy are so cute here, though.
I love this man. He's like the brother I never had. Wait a minute! He is the brother I never had!
Beep, beep, Richie. Thank you. Stan is dead.
Well, that killed the mood.
He cut his wrist in the bathtub right after I phoned him.
Aw, poor Mike. And now Bill gets the significance of the filled grave from earlier.
Stan was the last one of us to see it that summer. He kept saying that just isn't empirically possible.
Also, the memory of riding his bike away from something with Stan in the back is given context.
I can't honestly say I saw anything that day. Stan's the one who saw it.
Stan had seen it for the first time after having been beckoned into an old house. This time it appeared as a mummy with pom-poms.
The only thing he could think of to do was to hold his bird book out in front of him like a shield and say as loud as he could the names of all the birds he could remember.
Yeah, it may seem silly, but it worked because he believed it would.
Brown thrush.
And now Eddy remembers something about Stan.
Stan saw it. Not the clown, but he saw what was behind the clown. He said, I looked into its deadlights, and I wanted to be there.
Yeah, Stan was so messed up from having seen the deadlights as a kid that he grew up to be an eccentric man who killed himself upon being reminded of it. That's all kinds of tragic. But of course it has to add insult to injury now, because that's what it does. Now it's talking to them through Stan's dismembered head.
I finally made it, guys. I'm in the deadlights now.
And you know what? It's true what they say. We all float down here.
In the book, Stan still looked like a kid, since that's how they'd remember him. I guess I can see why they couldn't show a kid's dismembered head on network television.
They all float. They all float.
Go home, Stan. Nobody likes you. In any case, it is bringing out the big guns now. But they get together and will it away with the magic of friendship. Well, there are 6 of them now. Wait a second. Mike is Twilight Sparkle, since he's the town librarian and kind of the leader of the group at this point. Eddy is Fluttershy because he's the most sensitive of the group. Richie, the comedian, is Pinkie Pie. Ben is Rainbow Dash because he seems like the most loyal. Bev is Rarity since she owns a fashion business. And Bill is Applejack? Damn, it almost worked. Stan could be Starlight Glimmer since I'm sure some fans would love it if she killed herself.
I don't know about the rest of you, but I am getting really sick of this place. Now, I will listen to anything anybody has to say, but could we do it someplace else, please?
Anyway, Bill looks at the page from the typewriter.
He thrusts his fist against the post and still insists he sees the ghost.
And naturally, it's it mocking his stutter.
My mom gave me that to say.
And of course, the stutter comes back as it tends to do when he remembers his childhood.
To help with my stutter.
No offense, pal. It ain't helping.
I love that Richie knows exactly how to break the tension.
Let's get the hell out of here. What do you say?
And Bill is adorable.
Henry.
Meanwhile, Henry Bowers is seeing the nasty-looking reanimated corpse of his friend Belch. So, good to know that Belch hasn't changed much.
You got a problem in there you need some help with, Henry?
Interesting to note that now Henry is the one who has to put up with being bullied. Anyway, the one limitation of it is that it can only go after people who believe in it. Of course, Henry Bowers doesn't have that limitation, hence why he's useful to it.
I need you, Henry. We all need you.
But of course, Henry is locked up. But it, as Belch, says it'll take care of the abusive guard and get Henry out so he can go after what's left of the Losers Club.
And Kuntz is on the door tonight, man. Kuntz is the worst.
The guard is named Kuntz. I see what you did there.
Lead the way, Henry.
All right, dog meat, I've had it. Your head's gonna be bouncing off the floor.
The funny part is that this implies that the guard has an imagination. And apparently he's afraid of dogs. Okay, so I'm about halfway through part 2, so I'm going to end part 3 here. This is your last chance to watch the whole thing before I get to the ending. In part 4, I'll be finishing part 2. God damn.